the first thing you want to do if you're debugging positive is you're just going to go into the positive folder, and you need to add a text file. What I usually do is I rename license.txt, this right here, and only because it used to be that you had to delete the license.txt in order to get debug messages. You don't actually have to anymore. You just have to put in a file that says dev.txt. But like I say, it's just out of habit that I rename license. If you're running an old version of positive, then you do have to delete license and add dev, or actually, I don't think you had to use it. I think you just deleted license, then it worked. So, but this always works. So if you rename license to dev, you're good every time. And if you're not showing file extensions, just again, you just need to make sure that whatever you type in, you just type in dev. So Windows is really nice, and it'll only highlight the actual file name and not the extension. So whether you show extensions or not, if you just highlight it and just replace what's highlighted with dev, then you'll be good to go. So that's all you need to do with that. I'll move that down here. Oh, actually, the other thing we need to do is we just need to run positive. And you can see it's 85% complete with our analysis here, so it's moving right along. And I'm just going to run positive. I think it'll come up on my other monitor, but so PFB. Yeah. So here we go. And if we actually wanted, here, I'm going to not run that yet. So the other thing that we need to do is over here in working folder. Okay. So in your PRM folder, which I just have called working folder, because that's what positive defaults it to, and I just like to just hit next, next, next. So if your folder is PRM, it'll be PRM utility and then debug. And this is the new debug that John wants us to be using, and it's called Ultimate Debug Overview. We're going to go ahead and just run that. This is going to give you all of the messages that come from positive. I'll put it up here. And you can see these are the things that it did when it first started positive. Those are just little messages that John's put in. And this isn't something that's automatic. John has to put these messages in to tell us what's going on. But a lot of times he does put a lot of messages in there. So you can see all of the stuff it's doing. You know, it's telling you it's loading button images or whatever. It's actually right now sitting at swipe card to log in. I'm going to go ahead and log in. And now I've got another alert down here. That. Go ahead and log into the main console. See if it actually loads up. No, it loads up on that screen. So, as you can see, it just got positive loaded. And if you look at debug, this is the last thing it did is left sim server. This is usually what John will want to know, is what the last thing that happened was, or maybe the last few things that happened, or may say, did it get to the part where it says entering SWFNC? You know, and that gives him an idea of where he needs to look. It'll also do a lot of the SQL statements are listed in here. So you could take this SQL statement and run it in Management Studio and see if it's fast or slow or whatever. But that's usually what John wants to see is you know, what's going on in debug when you run it. When something's not happening or you're getting an error message, a lot of times you'll get, let's see if we can find an error in here. There are a lot of errors that are meaningless, so they may not matter, but let's see if we've got one here. I don't see any errors, but there could be errors in here, and it would show those up here, and you could say, yeah, it looks like it's getting an error at this point, or the last thing it did is it got an error here. Anyways, that's what John wants when he asks for debug information is what was the last thing it's doing or something in here. And you can actually pre-fill or look only at SQL statements if you want. So you could say, oh, see, here we go. These are all the errors that have happened. So again, these may not mean anything because there are errors that just don't mean anything. But that may be what John wants to know. So if we were having a trouble where the inventory list would never come up, we might leave this to all and go ahead and clear it, and then go ahead and pull up the inventory list, and then say, okay, John, we pull up the inventory list, and the last thing that happens is it's about to loop through events, and you just, basically copy this line and give it to him, and then he can tell you maybe what's going on or ask you for more information or whatever. A lot of times though, it will tell you. Go ahead.
Richard says you can type ERR in the filter.
Oh, filter. Maybe it's not in filter, but in find. I bet that's what he's talking about.
In that string,
yeah, so that worked. So yeah, it's gonna. These are the ones that had ERR in them. Error. So that's one of the ways that's really how we debug positive. And if John asks for debug information, that's what he's looking for, is you to run this and tell him what's going on. Sometimes it'll be pretty obvious that, oh yeah, it gets to this point and never continues, or there's an error message that shows up, and obviously that's why it's not loading. Or you might, you can plug this query into Management Studio and it's not giving you any results, so that's why your inventory list is empty. And John or I could look at this query and say, oh yeah, it's because this is the wrong station ID. That station ID doesn't work in that email, or it could be anything. So that's really how debugging works. So if, like say, if John asks for that, that's what he's looking for.